Hello again. Cathar Love 84. Which is better, belief or knowledge? Possibly both. But certainly we all have our beliefs. Only the Boers, who's in the Cathar Codex and the dialogues, Cathar dialogues, he says, what we believe for now is the truth, but don't be trapped by beliefs. Well, I think that's good advice. It certainly is as regards myself, because I'd like $1 for every time in my lifetime I've had to change my mind or modify my views. And quite often I was just plain wrong. I remember discussing past lives, reincarnation with my past wife, and how I just said it was a lot of baloney. And yet here I am sprouting about reincarnation, past lives, and the reality of it as against my belief. We all have our beliefs, and certainly our religious or spiritual beliefs for most people are based on those of their family. Another person said once, which I didn't understand at the time or didn't comprehend, that if you're still in the same belief, religious belief, when you die as when you were born, that's quite sad. What he meant by that, I believe, and I agree, is that really, in a spiritual manner, you really haven't progressed. But most people are happy with their beliefs, and why not? It's up to them. But with spirituality, you need knowledge, and to develop one's own particular version or brand or type of spirituality, mystical beliefs. Really, it needs to be investigated, tried out. One needs to put a degree of knowledge, preferably a lot of knowledge, into investigating just what your spiritual leanings are. Obviously, I'm a Gnostic Cathar, and I promote Catharism, and there are other Cathars or people who believe in Catharism around the world, and their Catharism may not be very much mine, because some wish to stick as much as they possibly can with the medieval Christian Cathars, whereas only the Boers and the guides that I've been involved with, they have all evolved from a religious perspective to a universal, mystical, cosmic perspective, which is universal for everybody. And so it's a situation, because it's philosophy, it's a universal philosophy, that even people in some religions, although some may retain religious beliefs, can also still aspire to be a Cathar. Because Catharism is not into churches, taxes, tithes, there's no buildings to upkeep. And there's a reason for this as well, because it's to do with your heart, your mind and your soul, and nothing to do with buildings. And also the other thing is that in this respect it's very hard to destroy, and you can keep your beliefs to yourself. But no one is born a Cathar. For a Cathar, it's something that you need to have read about, heard people discuss, feel drawn towards it, or whatever reason it is. But at some point you say, the Cathar journey is for me, even though your Cathar journey may not be exactly the same as mine. But obviously there are basic points that we believe in. From our point of view, we know. Now, many people say God saved them from a fire, or they spoke to God or communicated with God. Well, from our perspective, that's the Gnostic and Cathar perspective, the only one or thing or entity that knows God, or as we say, the source of all, the origin of all, is the source. Because the source, God, our divinity, we don't refer to it as God, because God already, imagine an old man with a beard, or maybe a woman with a beard, but whatever, there's an image that you have, whereas to a Gnostic, to a Cathar, it is impossible to have an image, because the source is simply unknown. So for anyone to arrive as a Gnostic and live as a Gnostic, or specifically as a Cathar that I'm talking about, it's meant, the very fact that you are a Cathar means that you have had to investigate that Catharism and have gained quite an amount of knowledge, or sufficient knowledge for you to change from whatever you believe or don't believe and move into the Cathar path. Now, we all, no matter how deeply we believe in something, that doesn't mean to say it's right. And I think at this present moment there's this great surge in humanity, the greatest mass migration of people since the Second World War, and this has come from the wars in the Middle East. But it's those wars in the Middle East, they were caused by Westerners, and specifically when we invaded Afghanistan, we weren't invited, and later when I'm talking about the people who participated, we invaded Iraq. It was a preemptive strike like Pearl Harbor. Iraq didn't attack any one of us. It was a preemptive strike, like someone's walking past and someone hit you, a king hit, and you didn't see it coming, and so that was against the country. That wasn't doing any harm to the other people. We regarded Saddam Hussein as a tyrant, and he was a tyrant. There's no one argues about that. There's plenty of other tyrants around. There's the young Kim Il in North Korea, and there's various people in Africa, and we've had Gaddafi and different people. But because one is a tyrant, or a strong man, it was necessary to hold this tribal culture of the Middle East, these families, these tribes, different religious groups, and to actually govern them, and they had to be governed in a very strong manner, even because just to save them from themselves. But people need to realize that under Saddam Hussein, that who by the way was secular. He was talking about Bin Laden. Bin Laden was a fundamentalist Muslim, and and Saddam Hussein was the exact opposite. He was secular. He wasn't religious at all. Saddam Hussein, bin Laden, was the enemy of Saddam Hussein. So it was a very strange place to go looking for bin Laden in Iraq, as George Bush was doing. The girls, they didn't wear veils, hijabs, burqas. They were as free to wear whatever they wanted, modern clothes, whatever. It's up to themselves. There was more women in the Ba'athist or Saddam Hussein's parliament than there were in the Senate and as a politician in the USA. So he emancipated these people. He gave them the highest level of education in the Far East. So though he was a tyrant, and that's not denied, and yet he did a tremendous amount of things for the Iraqis. Mind you, he was at war with Iran. He also went to invade the USA's good friends, the Saudi Arabians, and George Bush Sr. Led the coalition of the willing and destroyed Saddam's army. But from that, we had Al-Qaeda. It came from our involvement in Afghanistan. The CIA created the Taliban, and of course when the USA left, the Taliban suddenly realised, hang on, you just used us, and so the Taliban became the enemies of the USA. Because of the wars in Iraq, the Al-Qaeda, they gave them a foothold when they came in, and then from the Al-Qaeda we had the real, the extremists, and we got the Daesh or the ISIS. But all this stems from our invasion, the Western invasion of Afghanistan and of Iraq. Now the point I'm trying to get at is that I'm sure John Howard, in his ignorance, and Tony Blair in his ignorance, and George Bush ignorance, but these people had a firm belief in toppling Saddam Hussein and believing that they were doing the right thing. But the plain fact is, millions of people have been displaced. They're all over Europe trying to get out of this war-torn area, let alone hundreds of thousands, including troops, but certainly civilians that have been killed in this process. So I'm going to recite a small poem which I wrote, and it's for my book, Three Wars a Soldier. But it's satirical, but it explains my point of view as far as these people doing what they believe is right, which doesn't make it right. In fact, it turned out to be dead wrong. I've called it The Barbarians 3. Here's my book, Three Wars a Soldier. As you can see, I haven't changed that much to the poem. The Barbarians 3. History will write of us as the Barbarians 3. That is, George Bush, Tony Blair, and little old me. Who's me? Why, John Howard, silly. We are the Generals 3. General Bush, General Blair, and little old General me. We three, we had armies in great store to kill millions of people by the damn score. But any we left, we didn't kill or maim, had better be a refugee. When Australia invaded Iraq, all the world did see, along with Britain and the USA, we Barbarians 3. In Australia, Iraqis arrive, and so Islam thrives, and Afghans too, in their bid to survive. As mosques arise, John Howard smiles. Ah, that's all due to me. So it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, somewhat satirical, but the point is I wrote it to get the message across. What happens if you have war? People are going to die, and you're going to have refugees. That's a fact of life. So all this encapsulates the fact that what we believe, just because we believe it and we believe it with our heart and soul, our mind doesn't make it right, which applies to me as much as anybody else. So, from the point of view of belief versus knowledge, I'll go for knowledge every time, because knowledge means you've had to put some time and study into that subject and arrive at a conclusion of your own based on the evidence that you've managed to acquire. Whereas belief, and certainly religious and often spiritual beliefs, are those, and we haven't changed much from our family, and we believe what our family were born into. So, to me, I just discount that anyway. But anyone who has arrived at something, and they've gone from one belief to another, I know they must have done some deep study, some deep soul searching, if you like, or things may have happened to lead them in that direction. Because, as I've said before, no one is certainly born a Cathar, and those that move towards Catharism feel through their observations. The Cathar, the only group that was persecuted out of existence, and yet never persecuted or hurt anybody. It was simply based on love. But violence, power, will always overcome those who are based purely on love, so far in history. So, again, just making my point that knowledge, I think, is to be respected, because even if you may or may not agree with that person's perspective or what they've arrived at least you can say, well, you have at least investigated this and arrived at a conclusion, and so I support it. But when someone just says, oh, reincarnation, oh, that's just a load of baloney, or this is that and that, and they have not picked up a book, they have not done any research, this is, I'll finish off with, there was Sir Isaac Newton, who was the father of modern science, who was an astrologer and an alchemist as well as a scientist. And he was having a discussion or an argument with Halley, Sir Edmund Halley, and who discovered Halley's Comet, who was purely an astronomer. So they discussed things and they argued, but eventually Sir Isaac Newton finished the discussion by saying, "Sir, as far as astrology is concerned, I have studied the subject and you have not." Which means that Halley's opinion in that respect wasn't worth its weight. On that note, bye for now. Talk to you again soon. Bye.